Sanıyorum başladık. Değerli katılımcılar, 21. Bölge Bilimi ve Bölge Planlama Kongresi'ne hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Şimdi sözü açılış konuşmalarını yapmak üzere Düzenleme Kurulu Başkanımız Profesör Doktor Çiğdem Varol Özden'e bırakıyorum. Buyurun hocam.
Çok teşekkürler Tutkucuğum. Değerli katılımcılar, hepinizi saygı ve sevgiyle selamlıyorum. Gazi Üniversitesi Mimarlık Fakültesi Şehir ve Bölge Planlama Bölümü ev sahipliğinde gerçekleştireceğimiz 21. Ulusal Bölge Bilimi ve Bölge Planlama Kongresi'ne hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Bundan 26 yıl önce 1996 yılında 6. Ulusal Bölge Bilimi ve Bölge Planlama Kongresi'ni yine Gazi Üniversitesi Şehir ve Bölge Planlama olarak biz üstlenmiştik. Aradan geçen 26 yıllık süre sonrasında siz değerli katılımcılarımızı Ankara'da yüz yüze yapacağımız bir kongreyle ağırlamak isterdik. Ancak biliyorsunuz Şubat ve Mart döneminde vaka sayılarında yaşadığımız inanılmaz artışlar toplantıyı çevrim içine dönüştürmek zorunluluğunda bıraktı bizleri. Son 2 senedir hepimizin de bildiği gibi içinde bulunduğumuz pandemi koşulları bir hayli farklılıklar getirdi hepimize. Ama şimdi yavaş da olsa artık geride bırakıyoruz. Pandemi sonucu ortaya çıkan yeni dünyada üretim ve tüketimin mekansal bağlamları kendini yeniden kurgulamak zorunda kaldı. Tabii pandemi değil sadece, tüm dünyada yaşanan iklim değişikliği, afetler, çevre sorunları karşısında bir yandan dünyanın bir araya gelmesi kaçınılmaz iken, bir yandan da hemen yanı başımızdaki çatışmalar, savaşlar, devam eden bölgesel göçler, Avrupa bütünleşmesinin çok taraflılığın geleceğine dair belirsizlikler, ulus devletlerin yeniden güç kazanmasına, ulusal sınırların yeniden yükselişe geçmesine sebep oldu. Dolayısıyla aslında 21. Ulusal Bölge Bilimi ve Bölge Planlama Kongresi bu gelişmelerin tam da ortasında kendisini buldu. Tüm bu üst ölçekli gelişmeler devam ederken günlük yaşamın ve ekonominin devamı açısından yerelin ve bölgelerin yeni bakış açılarıyla yeniden değerlendirilmesi gerektiği ortadadır. Dünyanın, kentlerin, bölgelerin yaşadığı bu zorlu gündem çerçevesinde bugün başlayacak olan kongremizin temel amacı, farklı alanlardan bilim insanlarının belirsizlik ortamında dönüşmekte olan bölgelerin ekonomik, sosyal ve çevresel sürdürülebilirliğini dengeleyebilecek gelişim güzergahlarını yeniden düşünmek, tartışmak ve yeni kanıtlar sunmak üzere geliştirdikleri yeni çalışmalarını ve bilgi birikimlerinin paylaşmalarını sağlayacak bir ortam yaratmaktır. 2 gün boyunca sürecek olan kongremizde 19 farklı kurum, üniversiteden 104 araştırmacı, bilim insanı birbirinden değerli 58 bildiriyi bizlerle buluşturacak. Bildirileriyle kongremize katkı sağlayacak değerli katılımcılarımıza şimdiden çok teşekkür ediyor. Başarılı bir kongre geçirmelerini diliyoruz. Düzenleme Kurulu adına başka teşekkürlerimiz de var. Öncelikle süreç boyunca desteklerini esirgemeyen üniversite yönetimimize, bölümümüze ve teknik destek konusunda sürekli bağlantı halinde olduğumuz ve her an desteğe hazır olan üniversitemizin uzaktan eğitim, uygulama ve araştırma merkezi ekibine teşekkür ediyoruz. Kongre Bilim Kurulu'ndaki değerli hocalarımıza sundukları katkılar için de minnettarız. Kongreye katılım gösterecek, bizi onurlandıran siz tüm katılımcılarımıza tekrar teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve son olarak ben ağırlıklı olarak genç arkadaşlarımızdan oluşan ve süreç boyunca gayretli çalışmalar yürüten tüm düzenleme ekibimize yürekten teşekkür ediyorum. Umarım keyifli ve verimli bir kongre olacaktır. Bu dileklerimle herkesi selamlıyorum. Şimdi ben sözü bölüm başkanımıza bırakmak isterim. Şehir ve Bölge Planlama Bölüm Başkanımız Profesör Doktor Nevin Gültekin'i davet ediyorum. Buyurun Sayın Hocam.
Günaydın. Değerli bilim insanları, değerli katılımcılar, sevgili öğrencilerimiz, bölümümüzün ev sahipliğinde şu anda başlayacak olan 21. Ulusal Bölge Bilimi ve Bölge Planlama Kongresi'ne katılımlarınız çok değerli, çok teşekkür ediyorum. Özellikle 21. yüzyılda giderek şiddetlenen küresel risklere, tehditlere dikkate aldığımızda bu kongrenin çok değerli katkıları olacağını biliyorum. Sadece alan yazına değil, yaşadığımız bu son derece gergin ve sıkıntılı ortamı aşmada yaşama dair katkılarının çok değerli olduğunu biliyorum, inanıyorum. Bu nedenle tüm katılımcılara çok teşekkür ediyorum. İyi ki varsınız. Sonuçlarını heyecanla bekliyoruz. Düzenleme ekibine, bilim kuruluna çok çok teşekkür ediyorum. Görüşmek dileğiyle diyorum. Hoşça kalınız, başarılı, keyifli, sonuçları olumlu bir kongreyi bekliyoruz. Söz verdiğiniz için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Hoşça kalınız.
Çok teşekkür ederiz sevgili hocam. Şimdi açılış konuşmaları ve açılış oturumuna geçelim dilerseniz. Açılış oturumunda Avrupa Bölge Bilimi Derneği Başkanı Profesör Andre Torre'yi davetli konuşmacı olarak davet ettik ve bizi kırmadı, katıldı. Bu oturumu sürdürmek üzere ben sözü Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi Başkanı Profesör Doktor Tüzin Baycan'a bırakacağım. I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Andre Torre for joining us in this event. Andre, you are welcome and thank you so much. We are excitedly waiting for your keynote speech. Thank you. Şimdi sözü ve ekranı artık açılış oturumunu sürdürmek üzere Tüzin Hocam'a bırakıyorum. Buyurun Tüzin Hocam, söz sizde.
Çok teşekkürler. Sayın Bölüm Başkanım, değerli Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi üyeleri, değerli katılımcılar, 21. Ulusal Bölge Bilimi ve Bölge Planlama Kongresi'ne hoş geldiniz demek istiyorum ben de. Hepinizi saygıyla, sevgiyle selamlıyorum. Çiğdem Hocam belirtti, bu kongreyi yüz yüze yapmayı çok arzu ettik biz. Geçen sene çünkü pandemi nedeniyle online yapabilmiştik kongremizi. Ondan önceki sene de hiç yapamamıştık. Tam düzenleyeceğimiz tarihte pandeminin ilk dönemi, ilk patladığı dönem olduğu için karantinadaydık zaten. İptal etmek zorunda kalmıştık kongremizi. Geçen sene hızla dijitalleştik ve bütün teknolojik imkanları kullanarak online bir kongre gerçekleştirmeyi başardık. Bu sene için ise hedefimiz aslında yüz yüze bir kongre yapmaktı ve bunun için sonuna kadar bekledik. Şubat ayına kadar bekledik. Acaba yüz yüze yapabilir miyiz diye, ama vaka sayıları o kadar yüksekti ki o dönemde 100 binlerin üstündeydi. Mecburen bu senede kongremizi online yapmak durumunda kaldık. Umuyoruz önümüzdeki sene yüz yüze olabileceğimiz, bir arada olabileceğimiz bir kongre gerçekleştirebiliriz. Ben kısaca Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi'nin faaliyetlerinden bahsetmek istiyorum Andre'ye sözü vermeden önce. Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi, Regional Science Association International'ın ve European Regional Science Association'ın Türk seksiyonu olarak görev yapıyoruz. Bu uluslararası birliğin üyesiyiz ve Türk seksiyonu olarak varlığımızı sürdürüyoruz. Türkiye'deki oluşumumuzda Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi adı altında faaliyetlerimizi yürütüyoruz. Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi, rahmetli hocamız Profesör Gündüz Atalın 1987 yılındaki ilk girişimiyle aslında başlıyor. 1989 yılında geçici statüyle çalışmalarını yürütüyor. 1990 yılında Bölge Bilimi Derneği kuruluyor. Fakat o dönemin koşulları dernek çalışmalarının yürütülmesini çok zorlaştırdığı için, çok sıkıntılı bir süreç olduğu için 1991 yılında Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi olarak organizasyonun şekli değişiyor. YÖK'e bağlı olarak Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi olarak çalışmalara devam ediyor. Ve o tarihten bu yana da Milli Komite olarak çalışmalarımızı sürdürüyoruz. Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi disiplinler arası bilimsel bir organizasyon. Ve burada şehir ve bölge planlama, coğrafya, iktisat, sosyoloji, kamu yönetimi gibi pek çok disiplinden araştırmacıların, uzmanların bir arada olduğu bir platform. Ve ortak noktamız bölgesel ekonomik ve sosyal kalkınmanın mekansal etkileri aslında hepimizin ortak olarak üzerinde durduğumuz ya da bizi bir araya getiren en önemli unsur bu mekansal etkiler. Son döneme ilişkin kongrelerimizle ilgili bilgi verecek olursam 2014'ten bu yana her yıl daha öncesinde arada kesintilerin olduğu dönemler vardı. Bu 21. kongremiz, yani 20 kongre düzenlemiş durumdayız ve 2014'ten bu yana da her yıl düzenli olarak ulusal kongrelerimizi gerçekleştiriyoruz. 2014 yılında İTÜ'nün ev sahipliğinde bizler organize etmiştik kongreyi. 2015'te Karadeniz Teknik Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde Trabzon'da gerçekleştirdik. 2016'da Süleyman Demirel Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde Isparta'da, 2017'de Mehmet Akif Ersoy Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde Burdur'da, 2018'de Marmara Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde yine İstanbul'da, 2019 yılında Giresun Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde Giresun'da kongrelerimizi gerçekleştirdik. 2020 yılında Akdeniz Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde Antalya'da yapmayı planlamıştık ama pandemi nedeniyle bu kongreyi iptal etmek durumunda kaldık. 2021 yılında Erzincan Binali Yıldırım Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde Erzincan'da gerçekleştirdik. Kongremizi online olarak gerçekleştirdik. Bu sene de Gazi Üniversitesi ev sahipliğinde Ankara'da ve online çevrim içi olarak da burada birlikte gerçekleştireceğiz kongremizi. Ve biraz önce de söylediğim gibi bu 21. Ulusal Kongremiz bir Avrupa Kongresi 1990 yılında, bir Avrupa Yaz Enstitüsü 2000 yılında ve bir Dünya Kongresi 2016 yılında düzenlemeyi planlamıştık ama o yılda terör ve güvenlik sorunları nedeniyle Dünya Kongresi'ni iptal etmek durumunda kaldık ama böyle bir yoğun faaliyetler içinde bulunduk. 22. Ulusal Kongremizde bugün ve yarın 16 paralel oturumda 60 civarında bildiri sunulacak. Çok farklı konularda yenilikçilik, girişimcilik ve bölgesel gelişme, bölgesel rekabet, eşitsizlikler ve sosyal adalet, dijitalleşme süreci ve yansımaları, bölgeler ve yerleşme sistemleri, sektörel çalışmalar, mekansal yansımalar, kentsel bölgesel altyapı, yerel ve bölgesel kalkınmada yeni yönelimler, iklim değişikliği ve etkileri gibi pek çok alanda çalışmaları katılımcılarımız bizlerle paylaşacaklar. Ben bu kongrenin organizasyonunda çok değerli katkıları için, öncelikle ev sahipliği için başta Gazi Üniversitesi'ne teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Mimarlık Fakültesi ve Şehir ve Bölge Planlama Bölümü tabii ki kongreyi ağırlıklı olarak üstlendi. Mimarlık Fakültemize ve Şehir ve Bölge Planlama bölümümüze çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Düzenleme Kurulu bizim çok büyük bir üye grubumuz var Gazi Üniversitesi'nde. Gerçekten Şehir ve Bölge Planlama bölümü üyelerinin pek çoğu bizim üyemiz, Bölge Bilimi Türk Milli Komitesi'nin üyesi. Dolayısıyla böyle bir zengin kadroyla düzenlendiği için kongremizde çok şanslıyız. Ben düzenleme kurulundaki bütün hem üyelerimize hem bütün kurul üyelerine ve destek veren arkadaşlara çok teşekkür ediyorum. Bilim kurulu üyelerimiz her sene olduğu gibi bu senede kongreye gönderilen bildirilerin değerlendirilmesinde görev aldılar. Bilim kurulu üyelerimize çok teşekkür ediyorum. Katılımlarıyla, bildirileriyle bildiri sunacak olan tüm arkadaşlarımıza, araştırmacılara teşekkür ediyorum. İzleyici olarak kongremize katılan bütün katılımcılara ve teknik destek ekibindeki bütün arkadaşlara da çok teşekkür ediyorum. Umarım sorunsuz, teknik bir problem çıkmadan sorunsuz bir şekilde kongremizi gerçekleştirebiliriz diyorum. Şimdi izin verirseniz yabancı katılımlarımız için de kısa bir İngilizce olarak kısa bir hoş geldin deyip sonra Andre ile ilgili Andre'nin sunumuna geçebiliriz. Welcome to the 21st National Regional Science and Regional Planning Congress. I would like to thank also our organizing committee, local organizing committee, and Gazi University. They are hosting this event, this Congress this year. I would like to thank also to them for their contribution and for their support. I would like to welcome to our foreign participants. We are very glad to host them even in this online Congress. We wish we could host them inside event in Ankara. But unfortunately, the number of COVID cases was extremely high in January and February. It was over 100,000 cases that time. So we decided to organize our Congress as an online event. And I would like to thank also Andre Thor. He is the president of European Regional Science Association. When we invite him, he was immediately accepted our invitation, and we are very glad to see him here, to be together with him today. I would like to introduce, of course, everybody knows Andre, but I would like to introduce him shortly before his keynote speech. Andre is professor of economics, and he is affiliated with different institutions, also University Paris-Saclay, France National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and Environment, and AgroParisTech. His research was for a long time at the crossroads of spatial and industrial economics. It has now become more multidisciplinary and increasingly focused on questions related to territorial development processes and land use planning. He has published several articles and 25 books, mostly on issues related to spatial coordination between people or groups of people. His research currently focuses on the analysis of proximity relations and on their importance in processes of coordination between people. It centers on three main areas: local interactions between innovative firms, and more particularly the role played by geographical proximity in the transfer of knowledge, land use and neighborhood conflicts, and local dimensions of circular economy. His involvement in research administration has led him to take on the roles of president of ERSA, European Regional Science Association, and of managing editor of the Revue d'économie régionale et urbaine, Journal of Regional and Urban Economics. He is also past president of the French-speaking Regional Science Association. And today, Andre will talk about proximity relations, which is his field of expertise, as you know, and his recent handbook also on the topic. So we are very lucky that he will present us his latest investigation in this field and his recent handbook on this topic. Andre, thank you very much for joining us, and now the floor is yours.
So thank you very much, Sazin, for the invitation and for the very kind words, and also thank for all the organizers locally. I would have loved to be with you in Ankara, but anyway, next time we'll see together, hopefully. And I want to really to thank you for the organization, especially the organization committee, and everybody was there. I see there are a lot of people attending this session, which is very, very good. And you know that the Turkish section of ERSA is one of the most important in number and also in importance, in contributions. So we are very, very happy to work together, and I'm very, very happy to be there with you. And also I'm very happy because I will have the opportunity to share with you what Tazin said, which is what about my main field of expertise, and it's about proximity relations. So I will try to download, to upload now my presentation. Okay, and I think you can see it. So today I will try to, I'd like to speak with you about proximity relations. And as far as proximity relations are devoted to several fields of research, I will try to concentrate myself on one major topic, which is about territorial development. But first, I will try to assess about a few things related to proximity relations. And just to tell you that this is a concept which is quite recent in social science and especially in regional science, but which meet great and raising interest. Here I just put some results from Google Scholar last week, and you see that now the terms of proximity is very, very much cited, about 5 million article on that topic on Google Scholar. And this is very interesting because it's quite new topic. And so this notion of proximity, it has recently become very popular in different places in the society. But more interesting for us, maybe today, it has spread in the academic literature, and it is now widely used by scholars in different fields like regional science, geography, spatial economics, innovation analysis, cluster land use, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of works on that topic, and this notion of proximity, it has slowly emerged into the history of thought related to the questions of space, region, territory, and so on. So for a long time, it was an important topic, but it was somewhat hidden. In the words of people, of authors like Von Thunen, Marshall, or more recently Fujita, Tis, and so on. And it is only from the 80s that some authors tried to open first the black box of proximity relations. And they were the authors dealing with the question of industrial districts, local systems of innovation, milieu, etc., etc. And those people, they are trying to see what is inside proximity relations. They started to quote the term proximity in the 80s, And then in the 90s appear the first works on proximity with two main channels, I will say, of analysis. I could call it the French and Dutch schools of analysis about proximity relations. So mainly they employ different expressions, but they follow the same way. And this approach, they have been more recently integrated into the studies on regional or territorial development as well. So my topic today is to question the scope of proximity analysis in order to show you that this proximity approach that of course, this proximity approach is really plastic, so it's possible to use it and to adapt for different case studies, for different types of analysis. And also, I will try to assess two things. So one, to assess the importance of proximity relations or the obstacles led by proximity relations based on the grammar of proximity. And then, on the other hand, I will give some example on one topic, which is about territorial development. And in order to do that, I will base my talk on a recent book, which has been just issued 2 months ago on Edouard Elgar, and that's the Handbook of Proximity Relations that I edited together with Delphine Gallo, who is a professor in Dijon. And this book is the attempt to put all together all the specialists of proximity relations. We see that all the best specialists are there. I will show you immediately. And the challenge was to ask each of them to make a survey about one question related to proximity relation. So the idea is with this handbook on Edouard Elgar is to make a state-of-the-art of the analysis of proximity relation in order to cope with his history, but also to assess about the up-to-date scientific advances, and also to investigate into emerging questions. And of course, the scope is very huge because it's a big book, of course, and there are researchers, of course, in economics, but also geographers, organization studies, planning, sociologists, and so on and so on. So the content of the book is as follows. So there is the foreword by Ellen Scott. Then we made a big introduction with Delphine Gallo in order to assess about all the questions related to proximity relation. I can tell you that this introduction is free of charge, so you can download it on the website of Edouard Elgar, the website of the handbook. So I really invite you to download it or on my personal website. You can directly go to this or in ResearchGate, and then the book is separated into various different chapters. The first chapter is devoted to the debates, the major theoretical debates, and to the construction of the notion of proximity in time, and also to the main result now. So there are various papers about the French and Dutch schools of proximity. You see that the main authors are there. And also there are more devoted articles to regional development, to precise topics, and so on. The second part of the book is devoted to the methods and analytical tools. So the analysis of proximity allowed to make a lot of studies in empirical terms, because it has been widely applied. As you know, there are thousands of applied papers on proximity. And then there are 4 papers there dealing with different types of method, coming from econometrics to social, to networks analysis, and so on and so on. The third part of the book is devoted to I could say, the core of the proximity analysis, which is that a lot of main papers of works have been devoted to the question of innovation and knowledge. And proximity has been widely used. It has been used for a lot of things. You will see that in the introduction, for example, but mainly the main topic are about knowledge and innovation. And then I asked to several very good researchers, you know, here, for example, Andrés Rodriguez Pos, Ricardo Crescenzi, Phil Cook, Harald Battel, and so on, to make contributions about different topics related to innovation and knowledge and business in this respect. And then the last part of the book is devoted to the emerging issues and to the new challenges. So there are studies now which are available on various topics, and then we have identified new topics of interest, and we have assessed about them. And then the conclusion and the assessment about the books are made by Roberta Capello. That's also very, very big and important and very huge paper regarding proximity relations as well. So this is the main idea with this book, and you can have a look at it on the website. You can see that. You can see also you can grasp some papers. It's not an idea to read everything, but probably to catch ideas and to read the things that you are interested in. And mainly this idea, of course, about proximity, but what about proximity and where are we now with proximity? So in order to assess that, I will develop now in a very comprehensive way, but very simple, I will say, what is the grammar of proximity? Where are we now after more than 30 years of research on this topic? Where are we now and what do we know? So the first thing we have to assess is that mainly there are two ways to cope with proximity, and I will come back to that. One is about geographical proximity, and it has various delineation, permanent, temporary, desirable, unwanted. I will come back to that. And the second one is organized proximity. So when you think about proximity, you think about two things. You think about something very close to you, some proximity to the store, for example. But also, when you think about proximity, you think sometimes about things which are far away from you. For example, you think, I feel proximate with people from my family, but they are living in another country. So there are those two dimensions, they are there, and we identify them by geographical or organized proximity. Okay, there could be other presentations. For example, the one of Ron Boschman, 5 types of proximity, but in the end, they are exactly the same categories which are displayed and used. So let's start with geographical proximity. What is geographical proximity? Which is the most, I would say, common idea of the most common perception of proximity. When you're thinking about proximity, really, if you are not a scientist, you're thinking about geographical proximity first. This geographical proximity, at first sight, it looks to be very simple, which is it is close to or far from. But it is something which is relative. That's the difference with the distance. It's not only the distance at crow flies or numbers of meters or kilometers, but first it is relative to transport infrastructure, and their cost. For example, is there a road to link those two places, or do you have to walk by foot? Is there a mountain or is it flat? So the proximity is totally different related these things. So and also it is related to social constraints. For example, it's really easy for me to go to Brussels from Paris. It takes 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, but it cost me more than 200 euros. So it's not really easy accessible. So this geographical proximity is a social product, and it is also a potential that must be activated. So this means that it must be activated. Why? And I will come back to that, because sometimes you are close to people or to places, but you do not activate them, and you do not use this geographical proximity. So in a way, it is lying, and you have to activate it. This geographical proximity, we can divide it in two dimensions, whether it is desirable or unwanted. What is the idea of desirable? It's the idea that you have a quest for geographical proximity or to other actors, to other people, to some place where you want to go, and you are seeking for this proximity. And this is the case in cities, because there are a lot of works on that, on geographical proximity in cities. People come into the city because they find advantages to be located in the same place. That's also the same with industrial clusters, where firms and labs, for example, concentrate in one place. So they are looking for geographical proximity. But geographical proximity can be also unwanted. This means that it can be a source of negative activities. It can be due to the geographical proximity to polluted sites, for example, waste incineration plant, congestion in the city also, or also it can be due to the fact that you are living near people, you don't want to live with them, and you have problems to be together in the same place. This is the unwanted geographical proximity. It has there are a lot of papers on this question, till the COVID pandemic, because COVID pandemic has revealed the dangers of geographical proximity. So when you are living in a city, when you are living in a crowded area, when you are living in a small flat with other people, this geographical proximity becomes very dangerous, and it can be deadly as well. So these are the problems with geographical proximity, but it's not only related to social distance or COVID-19, but it is also related to the idea of conflicts. And it can be that you can be too close for some people. They are your neighbors. You don't like each other. And also it can appear that you are in proximity to a polluted area, for example, so on. So that's the problem of this unwanted geographical proximity. So this is the first idea. But up to now, I only coped with permanent geographical proximity. I took the idea that you are located in a place and you cannot move, and you are facing the problems to this, all the advantages of the geographical proximity. But in our era, there is a huge development of what is called temporary geographical proximity. What is temporary geographical proximity? Is the possibility to reach one place and for a small time in order to beneficiate from geographical proximity, and then you can come back, for example. So this temporary geographical proximity, it corresponds to the possibility of satisfying your need for face-to-face contacts, for example, only by traveling. You don't need to, like it is in a cluster, for example, you have to locate it together in the same place. But now, with the development of the transport and the communication, it is possible to move and to beneficiate from geographical proximity. These are the traveling, especially business traveling, when engineers are going from one place to another, but it is also a part of teleworking. When, for example, you telework for 2 days per week, and you go for 3 days or for 2 days per week at the office. And this is a possibility. And during these 2 or 3 days at the office, you do peculiar things. Usually you don't stay in your room, but you organize meetings, you see people, and you take advantage of this temporary geographical proximity to do a lot of things. and then you come back home. So this is really increasing, and this will increase a lot in the future due to reduction of transport, due to the problems of climate change related to traveling, and so on and so on. So it will increase a lot. So in the end, I will say that if I summarize about geographical proximity, it has great potentialities, but it has some limits. It has great potentialities because it can help, but you have to activate it. For example, if you live in a flat, your closest neighbor probably is one stair before, one stair up, but you see him or her twice a year in the lift, and that's it. And you say, okay, or how are you? Very good, and you good day, and that's it. So if you do not activate geographical proximity, it means nothing. And that's the same for firms of labs. If they want to collaborate, they have to work together. And also, this geographical proximity, it has some limit, and it has negative effects. I was just talking about this previously. So let's go now to the second part of the story, which is organized proximity. Organized proximity has a totally different content because it doesn't have a spatial content, and it is based on the relation between people. And it is based on two types of logic. There are two main reasons to act together or to be in contact together, which we call the logics of belonging and similarity, and I will come immediately to them. So what is the logic of belonging? Logic of belonging is the fact that you belong to the same network of actors. Let's say, saying it very simply. This means that, for example, you belong to a local network of people, or local network of innovators, or local networks of teachers in university, for example. But it does not to be related to space, to region, to territory. It can be worldwide. So, for example, you have the example of a community of practices when you are developers of the softwares which are located all over the world and they are communicated and working together. This is the example of us as researchers. We are working with a lot of people worldwide, and even more especially nowadays, we scarcely meet them physically, but we belong to the same network, we belong to the same type of organization. This is very important because we are linked by these invisible linkages between people. This is about the logic of belonging. But there is another logic, which is the logic of similarity, and which is quite different because it is linked much more linked with culture, I would say. And it corresponds to the mental adherence to common categories. For example, the same culture, the same religion, the same common project, the same expectations, representation, and so on. And this idea of this logic of similarity, for example, it is linked locally with communities. When you have some communities of people living together, sharing the same values, but also it is linked, for example, in a very much widely open way for the diasporas, for example, diasporas of people all over the world belonging to the same community and spread about around the world, like the Jews, for example, but sharing the same values, and they are linked by this similarity of adhesion to the same topic, the same values. So here are the main topics about organized proximity. Just to summarize, so it is non-geographical by essence. It's also a potential. It's a potential, but you have to activate it. For example, if you belong to the same diaspora, you have good potential to work together, but you have to activate them to discuss, to assure that you agree. So the being connected or related is not sufficient. You have to activate it by different means. Okay, so this is the idea of proximity relations, and these are the two main streams of relation. And now I will try to show on a devoted example how they work together. And I've taken the example of territorial development because it provides nice, I would say, nice examples about that. When you're thinking about territorial development, we are thinking about two things. On the one hand, about production or productive relations, but it's not sufficient. You have to think about governance relation, and you have to take them all together into account. So let's start to the question of production and innovation. As I stated before, a large part of the proximity-based researches has been devoted to the study of innovation relation, especially from people from the Dutch school, and they made very, very nice contributions on that about different topics, for example, about clusters, I will come back to that soon, about related variety, about the importance of geographical proximity, but also the crucial role of the distant relations, the so-called pipelines, and also they reveal the major role, I participate to that as well, to the revelation of a major role of temporary geographical proximity relation. So if I take one major example, a very simple example, that's the one of the clusters. Of course, you know what is a cluster, so it has been nicely defined by Porter more than 20 years ago now, and that the idea is that you have a group of firms, of laboratories that are located in the same place, geographical proximity, that they have exchange or cooperative relations with similar or compatible activities, and also some links abroad. So of course, there are very nice example about that, but of course, the main example which comes in mind of everybody is the one of Silicon Valley in California. But there are various types of networks, of clusters. I don't want to enter into that now, but just to give you some example, you see here two pictures of very, very different places, one in France and one in Canada. And you see that in these local clusters, not only you have a geographical proximity, the place is quite small, but also there is concentration of various firms and labs in this place. So if we analyze them by means of proximity relation, it is very straightforward, it is very easy. So the tools of proximity is very easy to explain that. What is the cluster that works? I mean, a cluster which is functioning well, not only a spatial concentration of firm of labs, but a cluster which functions with a lot of exchanges, close fertilization between firms, innovation exchanges, knowledge creation, and so on. This cluster, it is really based on two types of proximity. On the one hand, the geographical proximity, because there are the firms are located and the labs are located in a devoted area, in a small place. And the second, but it's not sufficient. They can be there in the small place and nothing could happen. So it means another dimension, which is they have to work together. And this dimension, it is provided by organized proximity relations. This means that organized proximity relation, if you remind, local people in a cluster, they belong to the same network, yes, and also they share the same values, for example, about one type of technology. They share the same representation, and so on and so on. So that's very important to think about the intersection about the two proximities. And if you look at when it was at the level of a cluster, if I come at the level of a cluster once again, you have, for example, in this cluster, you have firms of labs. At the local level, they are linked by geographical and organized proximity, but also they have relation outside of the cluster, and they are linked by organized proximity with firms of actors that are communicated with them by means of ICTs, by networks, by internet, and so on. And also, they are using temporary geographical proximity because people comes to this place to discuss with the labs and the engineers, and then they come back to their place and to their areas. And this is very important, and this is exemplified by a study we made a few years ago with one of my PhD students, and it is about a big cluster of optronic in the Greater Paris region. There are different types of firms dealing with this proximity relation and furnishing optic and optronics, especially for the army and for weapons. But here I take just one type of firms. It's what I call the high technology SMS. And if you look at this high technology SMS, I don't want to enter into all the detail, you will see that there are local exchanges with other firms locally, with public or private labs, but it is not enough. So they communicate, they collaborate a lot in the network, in the cluster, but also they have exchange abroad with public research laboratories or customers and partner firms. And this is the story of all the types of geographical and organized proximity we have. You can see them on the back of the screen. You see that there are different types of geographical and organized proximity. I don't want to bother you with that now, but that's the idea. And it is a very, very powerful tool, which can be easily, and which is, of course, used a lot. So so I was talking about proximity relations and production relation. Now I will come to governance. When you're dealing with territorial development, you need to cope with governance, because the crucial point is that you have to act together in the territories for an objective of territorial development. This means that it is not related only to the idea that firms need to work together, okay, firms and labs, but also public authorities, inhabitants, local dwellers, public bodies, associations, everybody has to work together in these territories. Think about a city, think about a rural area, and then you have this idea of collaboration, and everybody share the same goals of develop this place, to work together, to stay together in this place. This is very, very important. So the question of governance is really important, and especially it is very important in our era, because there are different types of regulations, of laws. They can be set at the local level, at the territorial, at the regional level, at the national level, and you have to cope with all of them in order to work and to develop together. And this is really, really crucial in terms of territorial development, this issue of governance, because the issue of production is not enough, of course. So you have to maintain both. One very important topic about this is about organized proximity. The idea of organized proximity, be it based on logic of belonging or logic of similarity. This organized proximity, it helps people to act together and to design joint projects and to make agreements between them, between different types of local stakeholders. Here, for example, I show you an example. That's a paper that I published a few months ago. It's about a process of methanation in France, in a devoted place, when we used proximity, but also network analysis. And you see here that you have organized proximity, I cannot enter into the details, but these firms, these local authorities, these technical services, these labs, these inhabitants, they are linked of organized proximity with the logics of belonging and similarity, but also there is the permanent geographical proximity, because all these firms, all these labs, all the inhabitants and public bodies, they are located in the same area, they are working together. So here again, you have this type of analysis, and you can come back to this story. It has been published in Annals of Regional Science recently. One last thing to say about governance, it is that the governance is not always easy. It's not always based on agreement, on working together, because sometimes it's difficult and it can lead to opposition and conflicts. It can be due by the fact that people do not share the same values, the same ideas, but also simply to the fact that they do not share the same idea in order to develop. For example, if someone wants to implement or to launch a waste site near your house or near your building, probably will be opposed to that. And you will try to oppose it and to try to prevent the creation of this waste site. And then we will have big discussion, opposition, and sometimes conflicts. So it's really important to deal with the conflicts and not to avoid them. It's really important to consider them and also to need to see how is it possible to resolve those conflicts. So they are due to unwanted geographical proximity. I spoke about that before. And but also organized proximity can be used in order to help people to solve those conflicts and then to imply them together and to improve the situation. So there are few words on that, and Tazin knows that because we published a paper in Annals of Regional Science as well on that topic regarding problems of related to the installation of dams, for example. Okay, so I'm close to the end of my speech now, because first I present you briefly the handbook of proximity relation. Then I designed you the grammar of proximity with the two main types of proximity, namely geographical and organized proximity. And then I went back to territorial development. I tried to explain you how proximity are linked to territorial development. How can they be used? And now I will finish with some pictures in order to show you in a very schematic way the link between proximity and territorial development, rational, how they are linked. So I'll restart again with production, and then I will come to governance. So if we look at the production size and with the industrial and innovative proximity relation in the territory, we can assess that very, very easy. So think about territory. So it can be, that's the oval now. It can be a cluster, a production zone, a local symbiosis of circular economy, and so on. So there is a location in this permanent location in this geographical proximity area. Then in this proximity area, you have firms which are competing. They are competing together, and they stay at the local level, and their relation is based on their competition. For example, that's the case when when firms are located in the same street, in the Marshallian terms, and they are competing to send their goods to various types of customers who are arriving there. But firms can also cooperate. They can also cooperate, and in a cluster, in an innovative cluster, for example, in Silicon Valley, firms are often cooperating at the local level. The more common case is a mix of competition and cooperation. That is what is usually described as co-petition, a mix of two. But everything is set in the cluster locally. There is a last case. The last case is the one of relocation. It is the case when firms cannot survive at the local level for various reasons, for example, for reason of local cost or the lack of local skills. Here I've put the picture about France and Romania. A large part of the French automobile industry has moved to Romania in the last 20 years because in Romania, the skills of the people are very good, but the salaries are really lower than in France. So it was impossible to sustain the production of automobile in the local clusters because it was located in very small clusters in France, and then it has been moved to another place. So which was very good for Romania, but very bad for the French clusters, as you can imagine, because they disappeared totally with a lot of problems. So this was about production. Now I come back to governance, and I will use exactly the same time of themes. So first, think about a territory. Of course, it's not a cluster. Think about the city. Think about a water basin or catchment. Think about a leader area in terms of the leader. I don't know if you know that that's a program. Yeah, you know that about the European Commission. And we think about this type of territory. On this territory, there are various stakeholders who are trying to live together. So one way to live together is to cooperate. So they can cooperate at the local level in order to organize with negotiation, with local consultation, consensus, and so on, try to live together. Another way is the way of conflict. So they can enter, part of them, or different groups can enter into opposition because they do not share the idea, they do not share the projects which are launched at the local level. For example, recently near Paris, there was a project near the Charles de Gaulle airport. There was a big project of installation of a big place for stores and supermarket and so on, very, very big. And it has been faced by the opposition of local inhabitants and local residents. And there have been about 10 years of conflicts, of opposition to this project. And in the end, this project has disappeared. So it has failed. So conflict is also a way of development. You have to take it into account into your development plans. And also, there is another way, which is to leave the territory. And this is the spatial exit. For example, if I take some examples, even in the EU, these last years, more than 3 to 6 million of people lived Romania or Bulgaria, different places, especially in rural areas, and they moved to other European countries because it was really difficult to live in those places and to function. People prefer to move and to find jobs or to find opportunities elsewhere. So that is what we call a spatial exit in the end. So it is due to the fact there is a lack of organized proximity at the local level. So just to conclude now, just a few words to be quite fast. If I come back to and try to make an assessment about proximity relation, I would say that it's a framework which is very useful for explaining current economic and also current governance evolution, social evolution. It is a way to understand the development processes. It has been proved at length, for example, with innovation. It is a tool to explain and to understand the spatial concentration. like clusters or cities. These are the two main examples, of course. But it is also a tool to understand relations between people, organizations, not only at the local level, but also abroad and also worldwide. So it is widely used to explain the behaviors in networks, worldwide networks at a distance, and it is based on organized proximity, the two logics that I have explained beforehand. And just to finish, I have to say that it is a very, very operational instrument. And it is his main interest, I will say. And nowadays, it is associated with a lot of other tools like econometry or network analysis, so different types of social sciences and so on. And it is now developed a lot because we have more and more data and more specialized data. So we can use proximity analysis. We can interpret this data by means of proximity analysis. So I think I have finished now. I just want to thank you for your attention and to invite you to read the book, to have a look at it. I think it can be useful, and I hope that you will be useful for you, and also that you will have very good work afterwards.
Okay, Andre, thank you very much for this great presentation. Very comprehensive from different dimensions. Thank you so much. I am sure there are so many questions about that. First, I would like to ask our technical desk whether they can unmute all participants and they can raise their questions. Some of them, they are also writing on the chat. Andre, you can also see the questions there. But if it is possible, maybe they can also directly ask to you their questions. How can we do that, Tutku?
Question, so I can start to respond to the. There are two questions in the chat.
Yeah.
So maybe I can start to respond. So and then in the meantime, people have time to think and to. So if I look at.
I think the first question is from Tanyel, and. She focused on, she says there is a missing link between geographical and organized proximity in terms of local democracy. Is it convenient to include the theory of democracy to proximity discussions?
Oh, that's a very good question. The response is straightforward. Yes, because it has started already. And the things I was talking about related governance is directly related to this question of local democracy, territorial democracy. Of course, that's the idea that now in every types of territories, and especially for us in Europe, there is this race for the local democracy, and people are asking for that. People are asking for this local democracy, and it's expressed in two ways, I will say. In one way, because they invent a lot of new things. They are very, very innovative in terms of social and institutional innovation. For example, local communities, common goods, short value-added chains, social communities, and also local cooperatives and so on. So people are really, really innovative on the one hand, on this level of democracy, and this is totally linked to the two types of proximity: geographical proximity, because they are doing that in very, very small areas, in local areas, and also because they're organized together in local networks, and they share the same values. So this is very, very important, and this is this very, very good case of study for this local democracy. But people are also expressing their behavior, their advices, their content in a different way, and it is by voting. And what we see in several countries now, in the EU, for example, and it was the case also in the United States, is that people who are living in some peripheral areas express their discontent by means of voting. And so it has been the case for the Brexit, for example, in the UK, when people in the big cities voted in favor of Remain, all the people, most all the people located in the peripheral areas, especially in rural areas, voted for Brexit because they felt abandoned. At the same in France, for example, if you look at the votings of the people in France, in the main city, they are voting for, let's say, traditional parties, but in the rural and peripheral area, they're sometimes voting for the extreme right, and the extreme, they discontent and they think that they feel abandoned. So that's very important for the question of local geographical proximity, the question of organized proximity is really at the core of this question. So I think yes, there are there's a lot of room to develop there. I've been a bit long because I'm really sensitive to that topic.
Okay, thank you very much, Tanyel. Do you have any further question? Any other question?
No, thank you very much. I think there are other questions, so I'm very glad to hear Torres' views. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question is from Ibrahim Tuğrul Çınar. Tuğrul, maybe you can ask your question. I think you can talk. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tüzün Hocam. First of all, thank you very much for your great presentation, Andre. I would like to ask a question about organized proximity and related variety. When compared to Franken's entropy indicator or Porter's cluster approach and Hidalgo's approaches, it is stated that the conditional probability indicator introduced by Hidalgo et al. Is much more appropriate for regional relatedness analysis. What do you think about that?
First,
what is your opinion?
Okay, so thank you, Ibrahim. That's a very good question. I think first that there are very good jobs, very good jobs, and very good point with relatedness. Because we talk about that in the early 20, but we're not able to concentrate it in a few propositions. So now with relatedness and related variety, really have been really able to concentrate it on the idea. So I think you are right first on your question, and then I will try to add something. It is that why is related variety really important? It is important for one thing because it indicates you that things are not straightforward. So you can say, okay, now we will put all things together on one topic, and this is enough, and we'll develop regarding to that. No, that's not easy. If you have to mitigate, and when you need to choose some topic of development, you have to have a look of if there is a local network of organized proximity, I will say. Otherwise, you will have white elephant. And that's the problem. So you have to take this related variety into account, and it has been taken. The second thing I want to say, it has been taken into account into the smart development policies of the EU. And these smart development policies, you know, it has worked for 10 years and now it will work for the next 10 years, which means for every region, every territory, the EU asks it, or asks the people in this territory, what are your choices? What are your choices of development? We'll help you to finance your choices of development, but only if you make some choices, which is you don't have to choose everything to develop, you have to make some choices, but you have to explain those choices. And your choices have to be related to the so-called related variety. So if you explain us, for example, in your region, you want to develop aluminium production, but nobody's doing that, that's not a good idea. You need to be involved into a local network of organized proximity. So if you state you want to develop in agriculture, okay, that's fine, because there is a local network of agriculture, of agribusiness at the local level. So this means that you can take advantage of this development. Otherwise, if there is no local network, if there are no links, immediately there will be leakages and you will lose everything. So this means geographical proximity is not enough. You need to have organized proximity as well. Okay, I've been too long as well because I really love these things as well. Sorry. But you're right. I agree with you, Ibrahim.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Eser Çapık. Eser, would you like to ask directly to Andre your question? Okay, I can read the question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the relationship between geographical proximity and technological innovation. So what do you think about this relationship with non-technological innovation?
Okay. Yes. So it's important. Yeah, it's important as well. It's important because we made too much works, and I'm one of the, I can accuse myself, of course. We made too much works about technological innovation, especially in the first part of the 21st century. We are very enthusiastic about this, and we were young researchers, and we were working in clusters, industry, and so on. And we are very fond about technological innovation. Of course, technological innovation is important, but it doesn't cover everything. It doesn't cover everything, and when you deal with territories now, it's more and more clear that there are other types of innovation. I would say organizational innovation, social innovation, and institutional innovation. And we have to cope with these different types of innovation. They are quite different from technological innovation, but they work in the same way, more or less, because they are inventions. And if they are accepted, if they are accepted by the society, they become social or institutional innovations. We have really to cope with them for two reasons. One reason is there is a huge development of this type of innovation at the local level in every country in the world now. So not only now we are talking about, we are Europeans, you are European like me, but it's not only in Europe. Of course, in the US, but also in Southern America a lot, and also in Africa now. A lot of this type of local innovations at the local level, they are not really much more technological, that do not involve a lot of technological high-tech content. The second reason is that we are facing now a huge challenge, as you know, with climate disturbances and climate change. It will become very, very huge in the near future. We need to adapt to this. And we need to adapt not only with big technological innovation, which we are quite inefficient regarding that, but we need to adapt with local innovation. And this means social innovation. This means organizational innovation at the local level, with, I mean, modest innovation as well. And we are really we need to deal with that. And then geographical proximity is very, very important. And then organized proximity is very, very important. And especially in the logic of similarity, because local communities need to find now their ways to develop and to cope, especially with these huge climate change, which are arriving now. So it's very, very important to consider not only technological innovation, of course, it is important. It plays a big role, but it is really important to concentrate now, most of all, in other types of innovation.
Okay, thank you very much, Andre. Is there any other question? Okay, I have a question, Andre.
Good news.
There is a big debate now about globalization. So, you know, we faced so many challenges in the last years, especially regarding also the COVID-19 pandemic, and so many challenges we had to face. And now there is a big debate, big discussion about the globalization, and many both politicians, also researchers, academicians, they are thinking that this is the end of globalization. Just yesterday also, you know, World Economic Forum is going on in Davos, and this is one of the main results of the discussion, of the debate also there, that there is a new world order now, new order, and then this is the end of globalization, and we should take a position against these challenges, especially the problems related to supply chains in recent years, and then all international relations, import, export, everything, all these fields are remarkably affected by this situation. And now everybody is looking in terms of proximity. Everybody is looking for, let's say, not distant relations, but proximity relations and geographical proximity. And this brings together also organized proximity, and there are several challenges also there. So this is the international dimension, but the national level also, I can give you an example from Turkey, for example. We face with many challenges. We have a very high inflation rate now. We are number one maybe in the world. The inflation rate is 70%, and we are getting every day much poorer. And then the cost of all products, but especially we are facing a kind of food crisis because the transport cost is very high, depending on the energy cost and oil cost, whatever oil prices, it's very high. And then we face with the food crisis, and then the discussion now is instead of for the Turkish case, for example, many agricultural products are coming to Istanbul, for example, from Antalya. So it's a big distance, and then the cost is very high for that reason. And now the discussion is we should allocate some agricultural lands for agricultural production in close proximity to metropolitan cities. Otherwise, we cannot manage this very high inflation rates and the food crisis in the near future. So there are so many challenges like that, and there is a big discussion also about globalization, what will happen about these global relations. So what do you think regarding your perspective, this distant geographical proximity and organized proximity, how the challenges we face now regarding globalization may change or affect proximity relations?
Yes, I think that's a very, very big challenge. And that's also a very, very big issue. So now there is an upcoming food crisis in the world. Completely agree. We know the reason. It's about they are linked to the COVID-19 and also to the war in Ukraine. Now they are spreading all over the world, and there are these big issues. Every day I'm asking about this question as a specialist of proximity in order to say we have to concentrate now on proximity relation, how could geographical proximity relations, excuse me, how could how build these things, how to relocate the productions and so on and so on. And this is a big problem. It's a problem not only in agriculture, but in various types of production, because it is linked not only with the economic part, but also with the sovereignty. For example, in France, we have had during the COVID pandemic big problems with the sanitary production, because we had externalized everything, including the mask, including the vaccines in China. And we felt completely despaired because it was not possible to have those things. And 10 years ago, we had everything. So that's also a problem of sovereignty, and also for a nation or for a territory, about the possibility not only in terms of in economic terms, also to live and to behave. So that's big issue. So the first thing I'd like to remind you that as economists, we know that there have been cycles of globalization. If you look at the story of a long story of economics, still a few 400-500 years, there have been always cycles of globalization and then specialization locally and so on. And so even if the trend is towards globalization, really different periods. Probably we are starting a period of protectionism, of local sovereignty, but it promised to be very difficult, because the globalization was so huge in the 21st century, and now we have to come back probably a few, and to come back for various reasons. I was talking about sovereignty, but that's not the only question. There's also the question of climate change and of the impact of transport on the upcoming rising climate change and rise of the temperatures worldwide. So probably we'll have to limit the transport in a while, and to relocate things in order to find local solutions. So all those things, they pray in favor of local solutions, and they pray in favor of the development of geographical proximity solutions for the economy, at least partly. But it's not so easy to do that, on the other hand, because there are two main obstacles to do that. One obstacle is, I would say, in terms of costs, because if the local production had been delocated, it was for good economic reason, I would say, because the salaries, for example, in China, are really lower than in the other countries, especially in Europe. So it was easier to delocate and to make things produce in China and to transport them. So if you have to come back to this, it will be very difficult. Very difficult, because things would become very expensive. We are facing a new era of inflation as well. So it's not that easy. Second obstacle is one of the skills, because during those 20 to 30 years of huge globalization, all the countries lost a lot of skills related to the industrial or production or innovation. And this is very difficult to come back and to rebuild those skills now. So it's even more difficult. And there is a third one obstacle, which is related, for example, to food sovereignty, because food sovereignty is really, really essential. Because if you don't have food to starve, you die. So you really, really need to cope with this question. And now I know that you have big problems, but in some countries now in Africa, problems are even worse. And it will take a lot of time for two reasons. First, you have to find local lands to do that, which is not obvious given the process of urbanization. And second is that you have to change the habits, the food habits. For example, if you take a lot of countries now in the world, 20 years ago, people were eating local. I'm a bit long, but I think it's important. People used to eat local cereals. For example, in that place, you used to eat local sorghum. In this other place, you used to eat local rice, etc., etc. But now, due to globalization, these habits have changed, and people used to eat more or less bread. The basis of their food is bread, and it is based on wheat. So there are big places where wheat is planted and harvested, and then spread all over the world, and people use that. They do not have their local type of production. This is a big issue. This is a big issue. And also, the second way, the second piece is corn. So there are, and soya. There are big farms of corn and soya in a few countries in the world. They are devoted to the alimentation of animals, because we eat meat, and we eat mostly meat of chicken and horns, and they are fed with soya and maize. So this is very important as well. So this means that at that moment, due to the big changes in the type of alimentation, it is quite impossible to come back to the previous story, because we lost not only the skills, but also we lost our resources. So this means that probably in the future, we'll have to rebuild local resources, which means local resources in terms of natural resources, I'd say, and also in terms of human resources. But due to globalization, we lost a large part of that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Any other question or comment? No? Okay. Okay, Andre, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was great. We had a nice discussion, and it's really nice to see you here. We wish we could organize Insight Congress and we could host you in Ankara. But next time, I hope, maybe next year. Thank you very much. And there are also some thank you messages in chat. Okay, so I would like to close the session here, and I would like to give the floor to Chidem.
I would just to tell you that thank you very much. I will have to leave now. So I wish you a very, very good Congress. I would have loved to be there, but maybe next time. And also I invite you to apply or to at least virtually come to our Congress at our ARSA Congress at the end of August. You know that part of the Congress, maybe half of the Congress will be online. So if you want to join and participate, you are really welcome. And I hope in any sense to meet you. And thank you very much for the invitation once again. Thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you very much, Andre. Your presentation and the discussions were really fruitful for us. Hope to see you somewhere in the near future. Thank you. O halde oturumumuzu kapatalım. Tüzin Hocam çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Yürüttünüz oturumu. Saat 1'de değil mi arkadaşlar, yanılmıyorum.
Evet.
Diğer oturumlarla devam edeceğiz. Saat 1'de 2 oturum halinde zaten bundan sonraki süreçte paralel oturumlar olacak. A ve B oturumları. Elinizdeki PDF dosyalarda zaten üzerine tıklamalı doğrudan interaktif bağlantılar var. Hangi oturuma katılmak isterseniz oradan bağlanabilirsiniz. Saat 1'de görüşmek üzere diyeyim. Burada kapatalım. Çok teşekkürler herkese.
Hoşça kalın, görüşmek üzere.
Oturumu sonlandırıyorum hocam. İyi
Evet.